They told my daughter she couldn't sing. They didn't say it kindly. They said it like a warning. Don't embarrass us. She stood on that stage, barely breathing. Her hands were shaking. I could see her eyes searching the crowd, trying to find a reason not to run. Her name had just been called, and every second of silence felt like the world was holding its breath. I knew that silence. I'd felt it once myself, years ago, when I was young and scared and let someone else's doubt decide my future. I wasn't going to let that happen to her. So I reached out, took her hand, and whispered, "Go on." She turned to me like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. I nodded. She walked up to the mic, slowly, her shoulders tense, voice locked inside her chest. The music started. She opened her mouth to sing, and just then someone from the crowd stood up and shouted, "Wait, that's my song!" Everything in the room shifted, heads turned, the judges leaned forward. My heart dropped. What happened next, I'll never forget. Because in that moment, my daughter did something no one expected, not even me. Her name is Leora. She's 13. She's my daughter. And this is the story of the day she stopped listening to the world and started listening to herself. Before that night, before the spotlight, the silence and the crowd, it was just the two of us, me and Leora, our little 2-bedroom rental in Eastwood, a peeling white fence, a patchy lawn, and a keyboard I found at a thrift store for $20. That was our world. I work 2 jobs. During the day, I'm a receptionist at a dentist's office. At night, I clean offices downtown. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. Leora knows how hard we have to work for everything we have. That's probably why she never asks for much. She's always been quiet, not shy in the way some kids are, but inward. Her thoughts live deep. She reads books about people with big dreams and impossible odds. She draws in her notebooks, pages full of girls flying, girls singing, girls with their eyes closed and their hearts open. And she sings, but only in her room, only when she thinks no one's listening. The first time I heard her voice, I had just gotten home late from work. I was standing outside her bedroom door, ready to knock and remind her to sleep. But then I heard it. It wasn't loud. It was soft, unsure, like a whisper wrapped in a melody. But it stopped me cold. There was this ache in her voice, this raw honesty that made my chest tighten. I didn't say anything. I just stood there and listened until the song ended. Then I walked to my room and cried into my pillow because I realized she had something special. Not just talent, soul, but in our family, and that music is a cute hobby, not a path. My sister Karen, she's the perfect one. Married, big house, 3 kids in private school. She's practical, structured, and judgmental as hell. My parents? They love Leora, but they come from a world where dreams like that, especially for girls, don't pay bills. They want her to be a nurse or a teacher. Something safe, something quiet. When I mentioned once, just once, that Leora might have the voice to do something more, my father chuckled and said, "You mean like American Idol? Come on, Maya, be serious." I stopped bringing it up after that. Then, one Saturday, I saw a flyer taped to the window of the grocery store. Tri-County Youth Talent Showcase, ages 10 to 17. Singers, dancers, poets, welcome. I stared at it for a long time. My hand actually shook a little when I took a picture of it. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. Part of me was scared to even show it to her. What if I gave her hope and the world crushed it? But when I did, when I sat her down and showed her that photo, her face changed. Her whole body lit up. Her mouth opened a little, like she was afraid to smile too quickly. "Could I really try?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, baby, you can try." She ran to her room that night and started practicing right away. I could hear her through the door again, a little louder this time, and it sounded even more beautiful. Every night that week, she sang the same song. She wrote it down line by line in her notebook. She practiced while doing her homework in the shower when she thought I was asleep. But not everyone was excited. We had dinner with my parents and Karen's family the night before the audition. I didn't plan to bring it up, but Leora was glowing. She couldn't hide it. "I'm singing tomorrow," she said while passing the potatoes. "There's a youth showcase downtown." Karen dropped her fork. My mother's eyes narrowed. My father sighed. Karen leaned back and said, "Singing? In public? Leora, that's sweet, but maybe save that for church." My father shook his head. "You should focus on your grades. Music isn't going to take you anywhere." Leora looked down at her plate. Her shoulders curved in a little. That light I'd seen in her eyes a week ago started to flicker. Later that night, in the car, she was quiet. I asked if she was nervous. She said no, but I could tell something had changed. I knew that feeling. I'd had dreams crushed by other people's voices before they even got the chance to grow, and I wasn't about to let that happen to her. She had something inside her. I didn't care who couldn't see it. I saw it, I heard it, and that had to be enough, because in less than 24 hours she was going to walk onto that stage, and everything about who she thought she was, who she could be, was going to be tested. The morning of the showcase, Leora was quiet. Not the usual thoughtful quiet she lived in. This was heavy, withdrawn. She barely touched her eggs. Just picked at her plate and stared out the window, still wearing her pajama shirt even though we had to leave in an hour. I kept trying to talk to her, just normal stuff to make the day feel light. I told her how beautiful her voice sounded last night, how proud I was that she stuck with it, how brave she was. She nodded, gave a soft smile, but I could tell it wasn't reaching her heart. When I asked if she wanted to do a warm-up before we left, she shook her head and said, "It doesn't matter." It hit me like a gut punch. "Of course it matters," I said. "You've worked so hard for this." She looked at me then, finally, and her eyes were already glassy. "But what if they're right?" she asked. "What if I get up there and freeze? What if I sound awful and people laugh?" I didn't have an answer that could erase her fear, and I knew it. I just pulled her into my arms and said, "Then you freeze, and I'll be there to catch you, but I don't think you will." As I helped her get dressed, I saw her hands tremble while buttoning her blouse. She kept glancing at the mirror like she didn't recognize herself. When I asked if she wanted to bring her lyrics notebook, she just said, "I have them memorized," and tucked her hands into the sleeves of her hoodie. On the way to the community center, the silence between us felt louder than the traffic. I watched her from the driver's seat while she stared at the floor of the car, headphones in, but no music playing. She wasn't just nervous, she was unraveling, and I knew why. It was that dinner. It was the way Karen had looked at her, like she was an inconvenience. It was my father's sigh, sharp enough to cut. It was that one sentence, "You'll embarrass us," that she kept replaying in her head like a broken record. She didn't say it out loud, but I could feel it. She was starting to believe them. By the time we arrived, the lobby was already filled with kids warming up, pacing, rehearsing lines. Some were laughing with their friends, dressed in sequins and confident smiles. I looked at Leora in her faded jeans and soft pink hoodie. No sparkle. Just that little sliver of hope left in her. We checked in, got her number pinned to her shirt, and found a bench near the back wall to wait. She was slouched down, arms crossed, head tilted forward like she was trying to disappear into her sleeves. A girl with big curls and even bigger energy was warming up nearby, hitting high notes like she belonged on Broadway. Leora watched her for a few seconds, then looked away. I leaned in and whispered, "She's not you. You're not supposed to sound like anyone else." She gave the smallest nod but didn't speak. Then, right before she was called backstage, her phone buzzed. A text from Karen. I couldn't see the whole thing, but I caught enough over her shoulder. "Break a leg, just don't overdo it. There's no need to show off." Leora didn't reply. She locked the screen and handed me the phone without a word. I wanted to say something, anything, but she was already being ushered toward the curtain, and the words caught in my throat. I watched her walk toward the stage entrance like someone being sent to trial, her back hunched, her hands in her pockets. Every step looked harder than the last. From where I sat, I could see the side of her face behind the curtain. Her eyes were closed. Her lips were moving slowly, maybe going over lyrics, maybe just breathing. I couldn't tell. The announcer read her name. Leora Hart, age 13, singing original ballad titled "Still Rising." There was a long pause. She didn't move. People started whispering. The judges looked at each other. One of the coordinators motioned toward her from the side, encouraging her to step out. Still nothing. I stood up. I could see the panic now, her chest rising too fast, her mouth tight. The words were still inside her, but fear had them in a chokehold. I made my way to the side, reached through the curtain, and took her hand. She looked up at me, startled, eyes wide like she thought she'd already failed. I didn't say much, just one sentence. "Go on." And she nodded. Not because she wasn't scared anymore, but because someone believed she could walk through it anyway. The moment she stepped out from behind the curtain, I held my breath. Her name echoed in the air again, this time more softly from the announcer, like they weren't sure she'd show. But there she was, one small girl, 13 years old, in a faded hoodie and worn sneakers, walking onto a stage meant for someone bolder. The spotlight found her, and for a second she flinched. Just the light alone seemed too much, but she kept going, slow and steady, until she reached the center of the stage. The mic stood taller than her mouth. She adjusted it with shaking hands. Her eyes scanned the crowd, hundreds of unfamiliar faces, some leaning forward, others scrolling on their phones, waiting for a reason to care. I could see the doubt all over her. She gripped the base of the mic like she needed to hold on to something or she'd float away. Her chest rose and fell, fast and shallow. Then she looked at me. I was standing just off stage, watching her from the wings, and she saw me. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. But she blinked, slowly, like she was trying to remember something. I nodded. Nothing big, just a small nod, the kind you give someone when you've got no more words but all the faith in the world. The piano track began. It was soft at first, a few slow chords, the same ones I'd heard through her bedroom door night after night. Her original song, Still Rising. A song she wrote in pieces, humming into her phone, scribbling lyrics in her sketchbook when she thought no one noticed. The intro ended, and the moment came. Her mouth opened, and for a second, nothing came out. My stomach clenched. I wanted to run up there, hold her, tell them all to go home if they didn't see how strong she already was just by standing there. But then, her voice came. Quiet. Fragile but real. She sang the first line like she was testing the air. I was told to sit down, to be still, to be small. A few heads in the audience turned. The second line came clearer, stronger. I've been broken and bent, but I've never let myself fall. Something changed in her. You could see it. Her shoulders rolled back slightly, her hands unclenched. She looked above the crowd now, not at her feet. Each word she sang sounded more sure than the one before. Her voice carried not because she was belting, but because it was honest. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers, and it filled that auditorium with something that felt like truth. And then it happened. Halfway through the song, right before the chorus, a woman stood up in the third row. She was tall, maybe mid-30s, dark curls tied back in a scarf. She looked stunned. She raised her hand and called out, not angrily, not rudely, just loud enough to cut through everything. "Wait, that's my song." The whole room froze. Leora stopped singing. The judges turned. The crowd murmured. Someone near the back actually gasped. The woman started walking forward toward the judges' table. Everyone was watching her. She leaned over to one of the judges and whispered something. They nodded, glanced at each other, then waved her over. She stepped up to the mic off stage and looked directly at Leora. "I'm Valerie Quinn," she said. "I wrote that song 3 years ago. I released it online, but never did anything big with it. I thought no one heard it. I didn't think it mattered." She paused. "But hearing you sing it, like that, like it came out of your own heart, I've never heard it sound so alive." Leora stood frozen, lips slightly parted, unsure what to say. Valerie smiled. "Keep singing." Leora looked at the judges, at the crowd, at me. I nodded again. She turned back to the mic, took a breath, and continued right where she left off. This time, the words came easier. Her voice rose with each line. By the time she hit the chorus, "I'm still rising, even if you don't see me yet," the audience was silent, focused, almost reverent. The entire room shifted. The girl they ignored when she first stepped up now had them in her hands, and by the final note, all 3 judges were on their feet. When the last note left her lips, the room held its breath. No music, no clapping, just stillness. Leora stood at the microphone, chest rising and falling, cheeks flushed, eyes wide with disbelief that she'd actually made it through the whole thing. I could see it on her face. She was still waiting for someone to say it didn't count, that it wasn't good enough, that it wasn't real. But no one said anything. Then the woman, Valerie Quinn, the judge who had called out, stood up again. She stepped forward from behind the table, tears in her eyes. She walked to the edge of the stage and looked up at my daughter like she was seeing something sacred. "That was the most honest version of my song I've ever heard," she said. "It was like you took it out of my hands and made it yours." She turned to the other two judges, who were both nodding, clearly moved. One of them, a man with silver hair and thick glasses, whispered something to the coordinator. Then all three stood up together. The crowd followed. It wasn't polite clapping. It wasn't forced applause. It was raw, erupting, real, a standing ovation. People were cheering, some were wiping tears. Kids in the back row had their hands over their mouths, like they'd just seen something they didn't have words for yet. Leora turned to me. It was the smallest look, but I saw it. Her eyes shimmered not just with tears, but with something I hadn't seen in her before. Belief. She smiled. Not the kind of smile she gives to be polite or to avoid questions. This one was pure. Like something inside her had finally exhaled. She stepped back from the mic, gave a quick bow, and walked off the stage. I met her just past the curtain. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She wrapped her arms around me and held on so tight I could feel her heartbeat racing against mine. "I did it," she whispered. "You did." Even after they said I shouldn't. Especially after that. She pulled back and looked at me with the kind of clarity that only shows up once you've walked through fire. "I thought I wasn't strong enough." "But you were." She nodded. Then, almost shyly, "Do you think they meant it?" The clapping? I couldn't help but laugh, not because it was funny, but because she still didn't realize what had just happened. I think they felt something they weren't expecting to feel. You reminded them what music is supposed to do. We sat together on a bench backstage, her head resting on my shoulder, listening as the next kid performed. The applause wasn't the same. The room was still recovering from her. A few minutes later, Valerie walked back to find us. She bent down so she was eye level with Leora and said, "Can I tell you something?" Leora nodded. "I was going to quit. This whole judging thing. Music in general. I haven't written a song in almost a year. Nothing felt worth it anymore. But hearing you tonight, it reminded me why I started in the first place. You woke something up in me." Leora blinked. "Really?" "Really. And if you ever want help writing, recording, anything, you have my email now." I watched my daughter process that. It didn't fully register right away, but a seed had been planted. After Valerie left, Leora sat still for a while. Not frozen like before, but calm, quiet in the way a storm is after it's passed. On the way home, she played the audio someone had sent her of her performance. We sat in the car together, parked outside the house, listening to her voice fill the silence again. She didn't flinch. She didn't say it sounded weird or ask to turn it off. She just listened. Later that night, after she went to bed, I got a message from my sister Karen. "I watched the video. I was wrong. She's something else. Tell her I said so." I read it twice, not because I needed to believe her, but because I wanted to remember this moment. The moment when someone who said she couldn't finally had no choice but to admit she could, and all because she stood still, took a breath, and let the world hear what she'd kept hidden for so long. Leora didn't just sing, she showed up, and they stood for her. The next morning, I walked into Leora's room expecting to find her asleep, completely wiped out from everything that had happened the night before. But she was already up, sitting cross-legged on her bed, notebook in her lap, humming softly to herself. She was writing again, not just doodling like before. She had lyrics, lines crossed out and rewritten, arrows pointing to new verses, whole stanzas spilling over the edge of the page. I stood in the doorway for a moment and just watched her. She looked different, not in any big dramatic way, but the way she held her body, straighter, more open. Her eyes had that kind of quiet fire, like something had been lit inside her that wasn't going out anytime soon. When she noticed me, she smiled. "New song?" I asked. She nodded. "It started coming to me last night." "You want help?" She paused, then grinned. "Maybe, just the chorus." That small moment meant more to me than she knew, not just because she was writing again, but because she was letting herself want something, letting herself believe she had the right to create. Later that day, the organizers posted the performance videos online. Leora's went viral locally. Not millions of views, but enough. Comments poured in. People called her brave, honest, inspiring. Some shared stories about being silenced when they were young, about parents who didn't understand, about teachers who laughed when they tried. One comment said, "I cried watching this." Your daughter sang the words, "I wish I'd had the courage to say when I was 13. Leora read that one out loud 3 times. That night, we sat on the couch together watching her video on the TV, and she finally asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Do you think I could really do this?" I didn't pretend to know how the music industry worked. I didn't throw statistics or pipe dreams at her. I just said, yes, because it's in you, not just the voice, but the truth, and the world needs more of that. A few days later, Valerie Quinn kept her word. She emailed us a list of open mic nights, songwriting camps, and one local program where kids could record demo tracks with mentorship. She even offered to let Leora shadow her in the studio for a day. Suddenly, the world that once seemed out of reach was inching closer. But it wasn't just the opportunities. Something had shifted in our family, too. Karen came by a week after the showcase with a bag of pastries and an apology wrapped in awkward silences. She didn't say the exact words, but she brought a gift for Leora, a leather-bound songwriting journal, and wrote on the first page, "To Leora, keep going." Leora was polite, quiet, but after Karen left, she sat on the floor and flipped through every single page. Even my parents called. My mom said, "We saw the video. She really has something special." My dad didn't say much, but he asked if she was still singing. That was his version of admitting he was proud. The girl they once tried to silence had made them all listen. But the biggest change was in Leora herself. She began singing with the door open, not loudly, not to perform, just in passing, while doing homework, folding laundry, brushing her hair. Her voice, once locked away, had become a part of her day. One evening, I caught her recording herself on her phone, not just singing, but talking to the camera, introducing herself, telling her story. She didn't ask me to leave the room. She just kept going. That's when I knew this wasn't just about one performance or a single song. This was about something deeper. She had taken all the fear, all the doubt, all the voices that told her she wasn't enough, and used them to build a stage. She stood on it, and she sang. And now, no one could take that away from her. Sometimes I think about that moment, when she stood frozen, almost swallowed by silence. And I remember the look in her eyes, the one that asked me if she was allowed to try. I'm so glad I told her yes, because when the world tells your daughter she can't, and you help her believe she can, you don't just change her future. You help her change the world. So if you're watching this and you've ever been told to sit down, stay quiet, or shrink who you are just to make someone else comfortable, this story was for you. And if you're a parent, a mentor, a friend, remember that one small moment of belief can change someone's entire life. It did for my daughter. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there might need to hear it today. Comment below. I'd love to hear your stories too. What did someone once tell you you couldn't do? And what did you do anyway? And if you want more real stories like this, about courage, about heart, about finding your voice, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.